My name is Jim Hill, and as a youth, I discovered that I was an artist. My uncle Norman, he was an artist also. He was basically one of the first black artists for Esquire magazine. And my other uncle who was an artist was Wilburn Hill. And he was the one that really made a difference in my life. He drew the logo for the Mayflower. Now, they taught me to draw what I see. Now, me discovering that I was an artist, I took that all the way into high school. Now, my mother had lied and got me into a white high school where they had loads of supplies. Now, in the supplies, I discovered oil painting. I loved it. I painted all the time. This was my love in life. I was so good at it that they asked me to enter my art in their fundraiser. They had a major fundraiser going on, and this fundraiser was all about getting the school more capital. Well, I was the only student that sold every single piece. Well, basically, I was excited, and the teachers were excited. They said to me, "Hey, how would you like to go to an art school?" I loved it. I said, "Yeah, I would love to go to an art school." To me, that was escaping from the ghetto because I lived in a rat infested ghetto, and basically it was the projects, and this was my way out. I was excited. I brought my portfolio. In bringing my portfolio, I showed them my work. Now, basically, my work described my community. It was all the beauty that I saw. Even the bad cats and the bad hats, I had it all in there. I was denied. They said the reason why they denied me was I had no white people in my portfolio. Well, there were no white people in my community. It was the Fort Greene Projects, the largest housing projects in the world. Well, basically, I said, well, okay, I love it. I want to paint, and I want to Pearl S Paint to buy myself some oil. When I saw the price, I was flipped. My dad said, "Hey, listen, there's 8 of us in the family. You got to join me in the meal ticket mission." So I had no money to buy oil, but I decided if I can't afford to buy oil paint, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create my own paint. So I went to the garbage cans in Brooklyn Heights. Now, Brooklyn Heights was way ahead of the projects. They were already recycling. So what they did in their recycling was they had magazines. I mean, the top quality magazines, posters. It seemed like all types of paper was there. So I collected the paper and brought it home. Now I needed a canvas to draw it on. So what did I do? I went to the back of the grocery store in my community. Now in my grocery store, the same garbage truck that delivered the grocery, the meats, was the same garbage truck that took the garbage. So it was a garbage truck and a delivery truck. Go figure. However, there were loads of cardboard. So I used the cardboard as my canvas. I went home and I started blending colors. Colors right from the posters. And I was trying my best to come up with images. All the mistakes that I made was basically my greatest discovery because it was my mistakes that made my pictures. And I went on and on trying to do it. Now my uncle hit me again. He said, look up the word charisma because it's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. Now I didn't understand what he was saying, but eventually it clicked because I became the leader of everything. I was the president of my junior high school. I was the civil rights president of young adults in the projects. I was in charge of the Tough House in my later teen years. I became president of the Afro-American Club in college. I became campaign manager for the senator. I became a teacher who the kids were drawn to, and eventually they put me in Who's Who of America. I became a dean, and that was where my problem first started. Because basically, one of the kids came to me and said that his gold chain was stolen. I said, oh, okay. So I went into the deep, deep ghetto and talked to the hood. And they said, hey, listen, here's the gold chain, Mr. Hill. You can give it back. So I went back to the school and I was proud of myself. I went to the principal and the assistant principal and I said, I got the gold chain. They said, listen, we want you to tell us who was the one that robbed the gold chain. I said, no, I can't do that because there was a no snitch clause. I lived in the community. You see, after I graduated from college, I moved back into a rat infested neighborhood. I wanted to be a part of a movement that would bring about a change. I believed that I was special and I could change the ghetto. This was my belief. I was young, I was in my early 20s, but they said, we want to know who stole the gold chain. I said, what are you talking about? They said, you got to make a decision. Either you're with us or you're with them. My decision was already made. I was with them. And trust me, I started to just describe my community through my art. I saw that the youth was destined to fail. I looked at what was going on, and as a teacher first, they had me teaching the tough classes, and I recognized that it was the gifted classes that were given the books, and the classes that weren't gifted, they had the worst type of supplies. So it was a setup. They would pick out the cream of the crop. It was almost like what W. Du Bois talked about, the talented 10. They would take out the talented 10 in every grade and they would give them all the supplies. And those were the ones who were really getting educated. It hurt me to my soul. I went on, I worked hard, and then what happened was I said, hey, there's going to be no changing in the Board of Education. I've got to utilize, my mistake was to utilize my art, okay? Because there was no money in the art because I kept on drawing things that was real in my community. And what people started to say is, nobody wants that truth on their walls. So I said, okay, I'm going to continue to draw the truth. The thing that was working with me was I had a job as a teacher. So I didn't have to worry about being a starving artist. My goal was, okay, if I can make enough money from my art, then basically I can set up my own school. Well, another idea came in my head. I said, you know what? I'll become a professional model. They make big money because I wasn't funny, so I couldn't do the comedian route. I couldn't jump high, so I couldn't play NBA ball. So the only other route was to model. So when I told my community, listen, I'm going to become a model, they started, yo, Hill, you ain't even good looking. What are you doing, man? You can't be no model. Well, that was their hatred of themselves because they actually believed that they were ugly. And there were many of them that were way better looking than me. But because they bought the 400 years of marketing that we were inferior, that we were ugly, they couldn't believe it. Okay? But guess what? They started to shoot pictures of me on billboards. At first, I didn't understand, okay, because they shot me as the Hennessy Man. And as the Hennessy Man, they were giving me $15,000 a day. So I said, wow, I'll have enough to start my own school. But then the contradiction came in. I had said in the past that, hey, listen, smoking is bad, drinking is bad, and here I was, the more cigarette man, I was the Hennessy man, and then I was the beer man, basically, Miller Beer. So they had me in all these ads, and it was time for me to quit. I said, I'm not going to sell beer, booze, and cigarettes to my community. it's not going to work. So I decided, well, you know what I'm going to do? I said, I'm going to go back into the projects and I'm going to work as a teacher and just rely on my art. Well, that was my goal, to rely on the art. I mean, I was losing out on everything. And I decided, well, you know what? I made a lot of errors while I was modeling. I literally lost my soul because some of the things that they wanted me to do, they said, hey, listen, we'll give you $1 million if you become the front man for Nigeria to get us the oil. Now, this was one of the biggest oil companies, and they wanted me to front a pharmaceutical company. But what the pharmaceutical company was doing was giving them antiquated, uh, dig this, antiquated hospital material. And in order for this hospital material to work, you had to have a great waterways. And the water system in Nigeria was horrible. So I quit. I denied myself the $1 million. But at the same time, my art was working for me, and I use my art to develop the first parenting magazine for black folks. Now, there was Parent Magazine for white folks, so I figured I would set up a parent magazine for black folks. And I was using my art to make it happen. Well, what happened is Time Warner Inc. looked at my work and they said, wow, you're either a genius. They were talking about my art, not me. They said, you're either a genius and do it again. So I did it again. You know, I came out with the second issue of the magazine, and they said, we'll give you $1 million. I said, $1 million? Wow, this is it. I can finally open up my school. Well, the bottom line was there was a catch. They said, we want 100% equity. I said, wait a minute, can't we be partners? Okay, so I can have, let's say, 50-50. They said, no, we want to own the whole magazine. And that really killed everything because they would change it. I was using ghetto children. I was using children from the hood to model, okay? Of course, they would take away that right and they would use the talented 10, and most of the kids would be light-skinned, and that was it. Now, I have nothing against light skin, okay? Because I have light skin in my family. But we have all different colors. We have black, brown, red, yellow, and white. The bottom line was they weren't going to allow that. It killed me, but I said, I'm not going to do it. I said, I'll eat out of the garbage can first. And that was my belief that, hey, I wanted to do something right. Now, I opened up a modeling agency, and this was horrible because the catalog houses called me up and said, listen, send your light-skinned kids only. They didn't want none of my dark-skinned children to be in it. I called my magazine Honey Child, and I called my modeling agency Honey Child, but it wasn't working. So again, I was sent back into the project in a care package. I said, wow, I got to do something. I want to make a difference. So I started to lead a homeless shelter. Okay, I became the president. I became basically the one that ran the shelter. And this is where I learned. Now, all this time, I was drawing the homeless men. And the homeless men, they were developing a great love for me. And one day, one homeless man said to me, hey, listen, do you have any socks? I said, socks? I didn't think of that. Well, I said, here, use my socks. So I gave him my socks. And what happened? It was raining that day. That's why he wanted some socks. I went out to go to school, and I caught a new kind of pneumonia. I was so sick, I didn't know what to do. So basically, I started hustling. And I was able to come up with enough money to buy socks, underwears, and t-shirts. And the next time I was giving out t-shirts to all the homeless men. And then I started giving out underwear. And one homeless man said, "You're a good man." And I looked at him and I said, "No." And I was only being honest. I said, "No, only God is good." And he looked right through my soul and said, "I'm not too sure about that." That blew my mind. I sat down and listened to him tell me his tale of woe. He told me a story that would make a rock cry. Apparently, God, when it was raining soup, he had a fork. I mean, nothing went right for him. I was just learning from the homeless men. At the same time, I was drawing them. You know, one homeless man shared with me, he said, "Listen, I have a wife and I have kids, and I haven't seen them since that Halloween." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I took my money and got drunk, and some teenagers caught up with me, and they tried to rob me." And he said, "You know, Mr. Hill," and I understood the hood. He said, "I played the wall." I said, "You played the wall?" He said, "Yeah, while they were beating me, you play the wall so you won't fall down." And they busted out all his teeth. I said, "Dog." He said, "I can't go home like this." So I've been out here in the shelter, living here for over a year. Now, that one other thing that I discovered was that homeless men have children. It was an open school night in Harlem. I mean, it was unbelievable because I was teaching in Harlem now. And what happened was the parents were there, and it was mostly women coming in to hear about their kids. And then I heard a whole bunch of cans, and I saw this homeless man drag a bag full of cans into my classroom. And he came in with a certain funk. And the women, they tried to leave quickly. I mean, I got to talk to them, and even though they tried to leave quickly, it wasn't quick enough. And finally, he came up, and he asked me about his daughter. And I noticed that his daughter had the same upside down smile that he had. Now, his daughter was a tough cookie. I mean, the kids would put her down, diss her, and did everything about her poverty outfit because obviously she was born with less and living in the shelter. So I said, "Hey, listen, your daughter's doing okay. She got 70s and 75s, you know. She's a good student." And he looked at me. He said, "She can do better." And I looked at him. I said, "You gotta be kidding me." He said, "She can do better and she's gonna do better." The next day, you know, they put me in charge because of the charisma and all that other stuff, in charge of the yard where all the kids would line up in the morning. And his daughter came running up to me. "Mr. Hill, Mr. Hill, Mr. Hill, you saw my father last night." And I said, "Yes, I did. He wants you to do better." And she said, "I will, I will, I will." And she started skipping off like Dorothy in The Wiz. But her upside down smile had turned right side up. The next time she got her report card, she had all 80s and 90s. And it dawned on me, wow, her father is a better teacher than me. He motivated her to a new level. And that blew my mind. And when you see my pictures, because this is what I plan to do with this YouTube thing, I'm going to show you pictures of the community that I described. And one of my best pictures is of the homeless situation because I'm actually drawing the men and showing you what they went through. But again, stupid me, because I'm an artist, I would get in trouble. And one of the biggest troubles that I got in was with the church. I'm a Catholic, or at least I was, or at least, well, I was a Catholic, okay? And I'm running the shelter in a Catholic basement. And it was that night during Easter when Christ washed the feet of his apostles. So what did I do? The homeless men, I figured I had it because, let me tell you, it was tough. At 8:30 every night, the homeless men, I told them it was time to go to bed. And they took off their shoes, and let me tell you, there was a funk that was beyond any funk you'd ever smell. So I brought them upstairs to the church to get their feet washed. Well, the parishioners looked at me like I was crazy. No one, because the parishioners were supposed to get down and wash the men's feet. Well, I had to get down and wash their feet because they wouldn't do it. And one religious woman said to me, "Mr. Hill, you don't understand. That's not our thing." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Everyone got a calling. Some of us got a calling for ministry. Some of us got a calling for collections." She said, "Your calling is with the homeless. That's not our calling." I said, "But I thought Christ called all of us to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked." This, in my humble opinion, was our calling. Okay? However, my art was starting to work for me. This particular man, Don Felder, he bought a piece from me for $3,000. I said, wow. I took that $3,000 and I bought showers in our shelter. So now the homeless men had showers. And trust me, they stayed in that shower, it seemed like all night, okay? And it was a heavy lesson that I was learning, okay? But the biggest lesson I learned was from Junebug. Junebug was now a homeless man. He was living out on the streets. But before that, he was my star guard for my basketball team. And Junebug can play that ball. And what Junebug did was, he was laying out there, he saw me, "Mr. Hill, Mr. Hill, Mr. Hill." I said, "Junebug, what's buzzing, cousin?" I was so happy to see him. And I said, "Junebug, you can catch a cold out here." He said, "Mr. Hill, we don't get sick." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "We don't get sick." And that was the lesson. Because I was in the shelter and I saw this one homeless man and he was sick. And I went up to him and I said, "Listen, do you want extra help? Because it seems like you're under the weather." He said, "I'm not sick." And I said, "What?" The next morning he was dead. I called up the authorities. They put him in a black bag and they took him away. And then I understood what Junebug said. Junebug said, "We don't get sick." And that was the motto from the homeless men. They actually believed that we don't get sick, because if you get sick, you're dead. And they believed in life, okay? Now, I found out a lot of other things. The homeless told me, "Hey, listen now, again, here I am running the homeless shelter, and the church closed down on us because it was all about I guess it was Dunwoody or something like that, because they were raising money in Brooklyn and they were changing the ghetto. So they closed the church down, they sold, and now," I said, "I still gotta help." So I bought a house for the homeless. And this was my way saying, "Hey, listen, you know, I'm gonna really make a difference." Okay? So I moved the homeless in. But this was a problem, because moving the homeless in, I had a storefront and I moved the Arabs in. And when I moved the Arabs in, this was right during 9/11. I mean, the police harassed the Arabs more than the blacks. There was one time when they came in and arrested the Arabs. And I didn't understand why they doing this. Because the Arabs were just defending their store because a man tried to rob it, and they hit the man, knocked the man out, and they went and arrested the Arabs for, for, for fighting this man who was robbing their store. Well, that was a lesson that I needed to learn because things were changing. But let me just share this. In all that I'm saying, all I'm really trying to tell you is I'm just an artist. No more, no less. I'm no leader. I'm no scholar. I'm none of those things. Some people have accused me of being a genius. I'm not a genius. I'm a moron, okay? And I know I'm a moron, okay? It's only that God gave me a gift of charisma. God gave me a gift of gab. And God made me an artist from the very beginning. And basically, that's my life. And that's what I'm going to continue with. So I'm going to show you some pictures on my next YouTube talk. And you will understand basically where I'm coming from. Because my goal is very simple. I want to set up a center for kids. I want to deal with coming up with money for affordable houses. Now, during all my work in the community, never once have I asked anybody for a dime. And the community will tell you. They'll tell you about the changes that I made and the things that I've done. But the bottom line is that I always relied on the God that I serve. And the God that I serve have given me the art. And one last thing. I have to say that in working in the community, I learned so much from the people. It was they that taught me. One of my students called me up after 30 years and said, Mr. Hill, I finally understand your lesson. And I said, the lesson when you came in, you had shaved the top of your head, and you said you're still me. He said, I'm still me, I told the student. However, he said, I'm diabetic, they cut off my legs, and Mr. Hill, I'm still me. Of course, my art is going to depict the beautiful community that I'm from, even though we were oppressed, even though we were given less, we're still a beautiful people. And that's what the art is going to try to say. So moving right along, I can't eat no better than I eat. I can't sleep no better than I sleep. This is my life, and this is what I'm going to do. And as I clock out, because I'm in the twilight of my years, I'm going to give God the glory and go on and try to make a difference in the world that I live. I know now that I can't change it, but maybe I can make a difference.